Hello again, everyone. Today I have something very exciting I got in the mail from PM Artist Studios. I got these foam stamps that I've been hearing all about in PM Artist Studio Live. So Mariah has been talking about these stamps. Patricia has been using them, and I was really excited to see these in person. They're such good quality. They're really durable foam, and the designs are awesome. And this little bee has like a little fur almost in like the bee detail, and even in the wings there's some details. And then I got two butterflies. So this butterfly has really cool dots in the top part of the butterfly wings, and then this little one is a cute smaller size. So I like the different sizes on these, the larger ones and then this little small one. And then I got these just a little envelope from them, and that would have their live schedule. And then I've got these two little, I think they're ATC size cards, along with this tiny little stencil, which is really cute with the lines. And this one had a little writing on it, and I don't know if that indicates what was on the other side, Naples yellow and India red maybe, but they're really pretty prints. These are really nice, and they look like they're acrylics, I would say. So, and then this one has almost like Halloween vibes to me with the purple and the black, which I really like. So thank you to PM for sending these awesome foam stamps. I cannot wait to use them. Now, I haven't used any tissue paper, or not really, for my gel printing, and I've seen a lot more people using tissue paper. Mine is just the Dollar Tree white tissue paper that you would use for your gift bags. And I had some pieces lying around that I hadn't used, so I just cut those up. Then I also wanted to test these out using my alcohol inks. I haven't used my alcohol inks in a while, and I love how alcohol inks work on the jelly plate. So there were 3 new colors I wanted to use that I hadn't tried yet. These are alcohol pearl alcohol inks, and because they have the pearl, you have to shake these, and then once you put the pearl on the plate, in order to get it to really move, you want to use the blending solution. If you try using the 91% alcohol or the rubbing alcohol, it's not going to really move it. It needs that fluid blending solution in order to get it to move a little bit more. So that's what I'm going to be using to get those to move. Once I use the regular alcohol ink, then I can use the rubbing alcohol, and then that one works just fine. So these 3 colors, they're kind of like a burgundy red, a scorched orange color, and then the radiant, I think, is the yellow. And I thought these colors would look nice with the butterfly, being that it looks almost like maybe a monarch butterfly. If you've never used alcohol inks on your jelly plate, I'll warn you early on. You see the color of my gel plate, how it's yellowed. This is because I use alcohol inks on my gel plate. I do have one gel plate I haven't used alcohol inks on. It's my 8x10, and I am purposely not using alcohol inks on it because the yellow colors and the green colors and some of the blue ones, they dye or stain the gel plate. So it still works just fine. I wouldn't let that discourage you from trying alcohol inks on your gel plate. Just know if you wanted a really pretty looking jelly plate, if you use alcohol inks on it, they'll probably stain it. And the only downside for me is that I can't always see what all the colors look like. So I really feel like when I pull a print with an alcohol ink, I'm always so surprised because it looks nothing like what's on the plate because all the colors are kind of yellowed out. Then what I like to do to get my alcohol inks to move after I put the blending solution down is I'm using Tim Holtz's little blower tool, and I'm just moving around the alcohol inks. This is tricky. You want to make sure you're not spraying too hard with the air, because then you're going to get these really, I guess, hard movement of the alcohol ink, and it'll have almost like spit lines. I don't know how to explain it, but like that, those little spit lines that come out. Sometimes those are really cool though, so I don't mind having a few of those little spit lines, but if you want a really smooth, soft, blended look, then you'd probably want to use some of that alcohol or the blending solution on the outer edges, and that will keep that alcohol looking smooth versus having harsh edges. So playing around on the jelly plate with alcohol inks is really nice because typically when you're using alcohol inks, you have to use them on a special kind of paper, Yupo paper. And Yupo paper can get a little expensive, and sometimes it's hard to find good quality paper. So the fact that you can use the alcohol inks on your gel plate and then you can pull the print with any of your papers, that's what I really love about doing it on the gel plate. So here I use that big butterfly, just testing it out right now, and put that right into the center. I am using one of my tissue paper sheets, and you can see that the alcohol ink seeps right through to the back. I even used my brayer on it, and the brayer even picked up some of the color. And then I had a little bit of remaining ink on the plate, so I didn't pull it all up. You can see a little bit of that butterfly in the center. Now this was leaking through to my hands, so I wasn't liking that the alcohol ink was bleeding through the tissue paper. So I'm going to do another one here where I'm just putting black over the top, because remember, those are pearl alcohol inks, so they have a shimmer to them, a little bit of pearl powder inside of them, I guess, and they should stand out against a black background. This is just my Mars black acrylic paint. I'm going to use another piece of tissue paper, and I'm putting the paper side down and the glossy side is facing up. Tissue paper definitely works better with the acrylic paint. At least it doesn't leak through to the other side like it does with the alcohol inks. Now this did leave some black behind on the plate, and it was a little bit, I guess, not a complete black paint pull. So I don't know, it had a little bit of speckly white in it. So on the plate, I have some of that black paint left over, and I'm gonna put those same colors down, the 3 pearl colors, and then I'm also gonna add some purple along the edges. There's a few ways you can move around the alcohol ink on a jelly plate. I just happen to be using the blower tool for most of these, but if you have a blow dryer, a hair dryer on a low heat setting, you can move the alcohol inks that way. Another option is if you can use your brayer and brayer out the colors, but then they really all just blend together and they don't have like that separation in color. And then another thing you could do is there's a little felt, almost like a stamping tool that you can use the felt end and just move the ink around with the felt tool. But they all have totally different results, and my favorite result is the way that this blower just kind of gently mixes the color, but it keeps them a little bit separate as well. So to me, I wanted to be able to see all the different colors and not completely mix them, so that's why I'm using this tool for these prints. As I'm blowing out my alcohol ink, it is drying slightly, and the alcohol, it settles, so wherever it settles once it's dry is pretty much what you're going to get. I am trying to work a little bit fast here because I'm wanting to stamp my alcohol ink and use my paper to take the impression of it before it completely dries. So here I'm going to use the butterfly stamp again. I'm just going to do it twice this time. And there was ink on my butterfly, so you could see it went into the area of the gel plate that didn't have any ink, and that kind of spreads that ink out a little bit further. This time I'm going to use copy paper, and you can see the alcohol ink still seeps right through, but it doesn't get onto my hands. I feel like with this technique, I just needed a little bit of a thicker paper, plus I wanted it to be more white, because then the alcohol ink colors really pop off the page like this. So the purple in the top right corner with the wings, I thought that looked really cool. And then the butterfly just kind of looks like a ghosty butterfly in the background there. And then all of the colors kind of just, they look so cool together. So next we're gonna just clean the plate with some black. And I've got the butterfly left on the plate again. And this time I'm gonna use a little bit of texture. This is just an egg carton. And I thought the bottom of it had some cool little circles, and the circles were not exactly all the same, so I thought that was pretty neat. They almost looked like bottle caps when they were stamped into the gel plate. I'm using another piece of copy paper here. My black did start to dry a little before I pulled this print, so there's still some black left on the plate. But now I have another layer here, and I might add to this one. You can see a little bit of the butterfly in the background. So then I wanted to use that black, keep that black on the gel plate and layer my colors back on top. So here I'm kind of playing around with the different variation of what the acrylic paint on the plate lends to an alcohol inked background. So that's kind of what this print is going to show. I'm just going a little bit faster, speeding up this process. It's a very relaxing process working with alcohol inks, just watching them move so gently. It really is nice, but it really does take a lot longer than what you're seeing right here. So I'm using the butterfly stamp again and just putting that down, and again just using a piece of copy paper. I really like how these colors look on the white. I think it's just the faint amount of butterfly on the stamped impression is just looking so cool to me. So again, I have more left on the plate, but look at how vibrant these colors are. And then I have this butterfly veins and wing up at the top right that has the green in it, down at the bottom that has like the red and the purple. I just think it looks so cool. It even looks like it has burnt holes. Then I've got just some dragonfly glaze that's just a sparkly paint, and I'm just going to use that to put over what's left on my plate. This won't make a very big impression, but I am using this cool little circles, like wonky circles stamp, and I'm just going to get some impressions out of this. Then I'm going to take that same piece that I had just pulled the print on with the black. I'm just going to layer this right on top, just to see if I can build up those colors a little bit. And you can see it did increase some of the intensity of the color on top. Now I'm really being intentional about my black. I like how the black looks mixed with the alcohol inks. I don't love how the black prints are coming out, so the prints that are in black, I'm just, kind of experimenting and seeing what I do and don't like. But for this one, I wanted to see what perfect pearls would look like behind after the paint dries, and I wanted to impress it with these butterflies again, but this time using some of the perfect pearls that mimic the colors of the alcohol inks I was using. So for this technique, you do have to wait for that paint to dry completely. And then you can go in behind it and put in the pearl powders. It's probably no surprise to you that I'm using pearl powders. I pretty much practice with the pearl powders on almost all of my print sessions. I just love how it looks, and it just creates so much interest to the prints that I make. Plus I find that you just don't get that much vibrant pearl when you're just using it on, say, Versamark ink. So I'm always just loving how I can get such bright colors when I use them on the gel plate. Then I always just rub off the extra powder so that when I put my paint on top, it doesn't mix it all in. Just using some parchment white. This is just acrylic paint. Now this acrylic paint had a little bit of a blobby spot in the middle there. I tried to get it out, but it didn't really roll out very well, so it does affect my print just a little bit. So that little spot right there, that was from that little blob that came out on my white paint, parchment paint. But here is the beautiful butterflies. They have such a nice, almost like coppery, shiny, foily look to them with those pearl powders against the black. So they do look really nice. Now we're back to using just alcohol inks, and these are not the pearl inks, these are just the plain ones. So for these I will be using my 91% alcohol. I just have it in a little squirt bottle here. Want to get enough alcohol on here to get those colors to move around. And after I added a little bit of the alcohol, I went in and added the rest of my colors. I'm going to be using the bee stamp for this background, so I'm going in with more of the yellow, orange, green, blue palette. And again, I'm just making sure to blend out the areas where the paint or the alcohol ink is fairly heavy. I had over blended this, so I just went back in with some of my ink colors and got these cool looking dots and was able to blow them out a little, but they had these cool, like, I don't know, separations in the circles. So I thought that was looking pretty cool. Then I'm going to use some of the circles around the border of the bees. And I'm going to use copy paper again to pull this print. That little corner piece was being stubborn and it wasn't pulling up every time. So I thought this was a cool start to the bees. They were a little hard to see. They blended into the background quite a bit, but I thought it was a cool overall print. I like the colors on this one. Now I'm stamping into the black that I brayered on, and then I'm going to put the alcohol inks over the top of this. I went back to my warmer color palette with the oranges and the yellows, and then I still wanted to incorporate some of the blues and the greens, more like a butterfly garden. So one thing I noticed immediately is after I had the alcohol on the plate and I started moving it around with my blower tool, the paint underneath just started moving with the inks. So it was a aha moment for me. I realized there was no point in putting any design into the paint underneath if I was going to move it around like this. But at the same time, I thought I could maybe manipulate this a little bit to do what I want to do, which is incorporate some dark specks, like the black specks, into the print without being overbearing. So what I did to get the butterfly impression back in there was I just stamped the butterfly over the alcohol ink. And I added the butterfly in a couple more areas than I had before. Now this one, I did have quite a bit of alcohol on here and I could see the alcohol through the paper. So I'm just trying to dry it a little bit and hope that most of it will pull up onto the paper. So this one looks so cool. Again, you get the black in the background from the paint that just kind of blended out when I used the blower tool. I just think it looks awesome, and I wouldn't have had any idea it would have done this if I hadn't just experimented and tried it anyway. So now I can know that if I want to repeat a design like this, I know how I can kind of use the paint to move with the alcohol inks and I'll get a cool impression. So this time I wanted to try something different. I did not let the paint dry in the background. I had the paint be wet while I was adding the alcohol inks on top. And I already know at this point that if I use my blower tool, the inks will move the black in the background. So now I'm being a little more careful with my blower tool and not moving the inks around as much as I did that first time. Also, I'm adding a little bit of the blending solution just so that those colors will blend together. Now I do notice that I'm blowing fairly hard, and you can see there's some spots of the black that are moving, but it didn't move as much when I was using the wet paint, so the alcohol inks on top of the wet acrylic versus the alcohol inks on top of the dry acrylic. That moved a lot more and a lot faster. And this point there was not quite as much movement. So now I will go back in with my bee stamp and just pull that out of the alcohol ink background. This one is a lot darker because I had a lot more of that black left on the plate, but it does look cool and graphic, and you can see still the design left behind. So that was a neat experiment. So for this next one, working on my dirty gel plate, because I want to use those layers that are left behind, I'm just putting all my colors down again. I'm going to blow them out and blend them. And here I am trying to move around those black spots in the middle, just so they're not quite as blobby. Got a small piece of this wire mesh. I'm just using it in a few areas. Then I've got some of my Spanish moss. I am using my tissue paper here so that I can hopefully press down that impression of the Spanish moss into the plate. And at the same time, it will end up removing some of that color onto my tissue paper. Another thing to note as I was brayering this is my little Spanish moss was moving around a little bit on the plate, but I thought it actually made a really cool impression because of that little bit of movement. You'll be able to see that on the final print. I wanted to add just a little more texture in some of the other areas. Now this did end up drying on my plate, so I needed to use an acrylic paint to pull this print. I'm going to go with this silver, iridescent bright silver color. And this print just looked so wow in real life. It was so vibrant, and that, I guess, the shine of the iridescent silver in the background, it just made it look so dreamy. And all the, I don't know, it almost reminded me of kind of like a spray painting, something like that, with all the colors blended together and the little texture in the background. I did want to add some of my foam stamping onto this, so I'm just using the plate as a stamp pad a little bit right now, and I'm just going to stamp onto this print. These are the bees. That I didn't press hard enough on that first one. I wasn't sure how hard I needed to press, so on the second one I pressed much harder. And that one definitely left a much better impression than the first one. But I like it still because it looks like it was more of like a ghost print bumblebee on the bottom and then a darker version on the top. I'm going to go ahead and pull a print from this. So I took these little dried flowers and just kind of rolled those onto the plate around the bumblebees. Then I'll just add my colors. Now, I know at this point by adding alcohol inks behind paint, especially dried paint, if I go to move it, it's going to move the paint as well. So I am being a lot more cautious this time around. So I did a very light movement on one of the bee wings. I saw that it moved a little more than I really wanted to. I was trying to do a light amount of movement. So I took my blow dryer on the cool setting and I just used that to dry the background. So what I noticed is if you just dry the background and then you can put the paint over the back of it, but then the paint doesn't move if you're just drying it. Now here's another experiment. As I was rolling out the silver on the background, the alcohol ink was pulling up onto my brayer. So it was leaving little holes, but the paint was filling in those holes. So it was definitely going to be an interesting looking print. All right, so this one, it has very bright colors inside the bee area, but then it's got some of that black on the edges. So looks like a graphic coloring of the bees, and I think that this one looks pretty cool, even though some of the paint came up while I was brayering. I'm going back in and I'm using all of my colors for this one. I'm using a little bit of metallic. This is mixative in copper. Mixative just means that it's going to mix with your alcohol inks, versus the gilded metals, those will leave more of like a gilding look. Going back to using my butterfly stamp. These stamps are so durable, they can hold up to lots of paint and ink on them and they still work great. I just used that one piece that I had pulled from before just to make sure all my alcohol ink was dry before I added my paint. Still had that one corner that was being stubborn throughout this whole print session. I tried to get it up with this piece, but it just did not want to come up. I did let this paint dry on the plate for about 3 minutes. I thought this one looked really cool with all the colors and then the black border from the previous prints. So I just thought the little ghost impressions of the butterflies looked so cool. And then with this one, it had that copper. So the copper really made the butterfly part stand out when you tilted it. So this is what the stamp looks like after using it with my alcohol inks. It's got some color on there. I could probably scrub it off with the alcohol, rubbing alcohol, but I don't think that the alcohol is going to ruin how they're going to work. But they held up really well through this stamp session. I love the little detail on this bee. I think these stamps are so fun. The sizes are great, and this little circles, wonky circles, was a really cool background stamp. So I am so happy with these prints, and so thankful to PM Artist Studios for thinking of me and letting me test out these stamps, the foam stamps. I had tested out their stencils, and if you haven't seen that video, I will link that video at the end of this video so you can see what their stamps are like. Their stencils are like. They use Yupo to create their stencils, and they're also very durable, but you just have a little bit of a different working environment with the Yupo for the stencil than you do with a regular plastic stencil. So it lends a lot of flexibility. So these impressions that I got on my alcohol inked backgrounds, I really love how they turned out on the copy paper because they're so bright. This one looks like it just has like burnt holes in it, so I think it looks really cool. These are going to make some really fun either card backgrounds. I could use them in tags. I can use them really, quite a few things. So the colors on these, though, they're just so vibrant and fun. That's what I love about the alcohol inks, is I know I'm going to get a really bright color. So those are the bright ones. So now I'm going to show you some of my darker ones. This is the 2 bees that had more of the black paint in there. Oh, and this one is the one with the iridescent paint in the background. So it was a very shimmery, soft look to this. And then the bees, because I used that iridescent silver paint, the bees took on some of the iridescent shine. These are the 2 bees that have the black that mixed up a little bit in the background. And then my last print here with all the colors and the beautiful butterfly stamp in the background. in a couple of different areas. But again, beautiful with the colors and the little distressing edges of the black. So that finishes out all of the jelly prints that I made for this time around. I hope you enjoyed seeing how these awesome foam stamps work on alcohol ink on the gel plate. I can't wait to try it with my acrylic paints and maybe my distress inks next. So stay tuned. I'm sure I'm going to be using these a lot in my projects, and let me know what's your favorite of these. Is it the ones with the black? Is it the ones with the pearls? Or is it the brightly colored ones? I think my favorites are the brightly colored ones. I just love color. So yeah, so that finishes out our video, and I will see you in the next one. Happy crafting, y'all.